grid system, so, north and south and east and west.
Hmm.
In some of the older areas of town, it's not a perfect grid system, so there are some exceptions. And the other quirky thing about Ottawa, we have a strange habit. Some of our streets change names for no apparent reason. So you're on a perfectly good street that may be called Wellington Street, and then
Hmm.
as you cross the Rideau Canal, it turns into Rideau Street. And there's no real rhyme or reason for it at this time. There are historic reasons, of course, why, but it makes, it keeps you on your toes.
Oh, good. Nothing like keeping you on your toes when you're lost.
Exactly. But again, we come back to the friendly people. It's
Mhm.
always easy to stop and ask for directions.
Yeah. Checking it out before you check in on the John Guinn Travel Show on ukhealthradio.com. If you haven't decided where you're travelling to this year, and I guess that after listening to Jantine speaking about Ottawa, that could be high up on your list, put a post on facebook.com/John Guinn Travel Show asking for more information about a destination that's of interest to you, and I'll either get a guest on to talk about it or point you in the direction of a recording where that destination was featured in the past. Even if you just got a simple question about where's the best place to eat a burrito in Mexico, let me know and I'll get the answer to you. facebook.com/John Guinn Travel Show. I'm still speaking to Jantine about Ottawa. We've talked about if the city's safe, how you can get there from the UK, or the best part of the city to stay if you're a visitor. But now we're going to move on to what the main attractions of the city are.
I think the big three would be Parliament Hill. Again, they offer free tours of our Parliament buildings. The Rideau Canal, which is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. So this is a canal that was built by a British man, Lieutenant Colonel John By, between not him alone. There were thousands of laborers, of course, that helped with the task. It stretches 202 kilometers down to Kingston and Lake Ontario, so the Great Lakes system. And it was declared a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 2007. And nowadays you can, during the winter, you can skate along the Rideau Canal. In the summer, you can boat, if you rent a houseboat, let's say, and come through the locks system in Ottawa. You can also rent a bike and cycle along the recreational pathways on either side. And you can see the locks being operated the way they operated in 1832 when it opened. So that's why it's a UNESCO World Heritage Site, because the locks are still in the same condition as when they were built. So it's a real educational as well as a real fun activity. And then the third major attraction would be the Byward Market District. So usually when I say market, people think a one day a week thing, or maybe it's a building that all the farmers congregate in. But in Ottawa, the Byward Market is a whole neighborhood. It is a farmer's market, and there are people selling outside 363 days a year. So they're closed on Christmas Day and New Year's Day. Of course, in January and February, we're not looking at fresh fruits and vegetables so much as we are arts and crafts and maple syrup and cut flowers and things like that. But as the seasons go through, you get a real take on what the local produce is. And so not only is it that farmer's market though, but it's 4 blocks by 4 blocks surrounding the farmer's market with some of the city's best restaurants, bars, nightlife, entertainment, shopping, really unique owner-occupied boutiques, not the chain stores. It's a real vibrant area of the city. It's where I hang out a lot of my time, so it's not just for visitors, it's also for locals. That's a really vibrant neighborhood that most people make their way to. And then, of course, because we're the capital, we're home to most of the national museums. So if you have an interest in Canadian culture, you can visit the National Gallery of Canada and see some great artworks. The Canadian Museum of History is a great recounting of Aboriginal history in particular, and does special events all the time. The Canadian Museum of Nature, the Canadian War Museum, Science and Technology, Aviation and Space, Agriculture and Food. There's really a museum for almost everyone. But really, I know that some people have an impression of museums. They think, they're very staid and formal institutions and a little bit boring maybe. But frankly, that's not the case. In recent years, the museum scene has really been invigorated, and they do really cool programming, not for kids especially, but for adults as well. The Museum of Nature, for instance, they launched once monthly events called Nature Nocturne, and these are aimed at young professionals, so people in their late 20s, 30s maybe. It's an after work on Friday event where they open up the museum, and it's like a disco. I mean, there's music, there's DJs spinning tunes. They serve local craft beer and wine and lovely nibbly food, and you just dance the night away in this beautiful old museum building, and it's really a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's definitely one way of getting them into the museum, isn't it? Have a party.
Mm-hmm. It is.
We've already mentioned the Tulip Festival, but is there any other annual events in the city?
Definitely. In the summer months, there's a lot of music festivals, of course. So we've got the Ottawa Jazz Festival, a blues fest, which, despite its name, is not just blues music. It started off as a blues music festival, but it just celebrated its 20th anniversary a year ago, and they've really diversified their acts. They've had everyone from Kiss to Keith Urban to the Black Eyed Peas. It's been a real mix of artists. That's in July. The Chamber Music Festival in Ottawa is the largest in the world. So if you're into chamber music, their concerts are held in downtown churches in just beautiful surroundings with great acoustics. That's in late July and early August. We've got a folk festival called City Folk that's in September. And then for non-music festivals, we have an animation festival each fall that attracts animators from around the world, a writers festival both in spring and fall that brings in not just Canadian writers but international writers as well. And then our big winter festival is called Winterlude, and that happens over the first 3 weekends of February each year, and it just really shows how Canadians embrace the winter. So there's outdoor activities, whether you want to go ice skating, downhill skiing, cross-country skiing, snowshoeing. They build huge snow and ice slides that kids love, but frankly, I don't have children, and I love going there myself. You just slide down these on inner tubes, or there's some where you just sit down in your snow pants and slide down. It's a real fun event that not just embraces the outdoors and the cold, but also has culinary events and indoor activities as well that are a lot of fun.
You're listening to The Travel Show with John Guinn on ukhealthradio.com. We're finding out about Ottawa on the show this week. And if you're a regular listener, you probably know what's coming up next. Yes, I want to know about the food.
It's diverse. I mean, being the capital, we definitely have influences from all over the world here. We are also home to the North American headquarters of Le Cordon Bleu, the famous French cooking school. Mm-hmm. So you can embrace your inner Julia Child here and take some courses, or if you prefer, you can just dine in their wonderful restaurant Signatures and enjoy the fruits of others' labor. There's a dish called, or a treat called beaver tails that we sometimes try to play jokes on people about. We say, hey, how would you like to try a beaver tail? And people try to be polite and say, oh, that sounds delicious. But you can tell they're very afraid of the concept. But rest assured, no beavers were harmed in the making of a beaver tail. It's actually a pastry treat. So it's a whole wheat pastry that's been stretched into the shape of a beaver's tail. Then they float fry it in canola oil, and then they brush it with butter. And usually the topping, or the most popular topping, is cinnamon and sugar. So it's a sweet, hot treat. Mm-hmm. My favorite is cinnamon sugar and a squeeze of lemon on top. But they also do some with a chocolate hazelnut spread, or with maple butter, which is delicious and sticky, and it gets in your hair, and it's just oozy, ooey, gooey goodness. That's really popular. And beaver tails were created in Ottawa, and they've now you can find them across Canada, and even I think they have some in South Korea, and they just announced a couple weeks ago that they're expanding into Japan and the United Arab Emirates in the next year. So that's exciting. Ottawa's also known for shawarma, of all things. We have a big Lebanese population, and our shawarma shops, I would stack up against any in the world. There's a lot of them. They're usually family run, and they are a great almost street food. It's not expensive, but it's delicious. It's garlicky. It's very rich. I can't say enough about the shawarma here. And then we have an initiative called Savor Ottawa, which tries to link up local or encourages local chefs and farmers to work together and see more local items on the menu. So, of course, in this part of the country, we're known for our maple syrup, but that's expanded so much into other maple products. Like you can get granulated sugar with maple flavor, so that's great, for your tea or your coffee, or for desserts. There's maple butter and maple taffy and maple sugar, maple everything. There's great honey. We have a cranberry bog within the city limits of Ottawa. Our beef and pork producers are amazing, and then of course vegetables and fruits that grow in the surrounding rural area. And that's a little known fact about Ottawa, is that geographically we're a very large city. We're almost 100 kilometers from east to west and about 60 kilometers from north to south. So we're just huge in terms of land area, but 85% of that land area is rural. So we've got 1,100 farms within the city limits of Ottawa. So you don't think of a capital city being a farming center, and yet we're surrounded by very fertile and very productive farmland. That means that we eat well. We're looking forward. Spring is just around the corner. We're looking forward. One of the first local products that comes up beyond maple syrup, which is the sap is starting to run now. There's something called fiddleheads, and fiddleheads are a fern that's found in eastern Canada, and they're the shape of the fern. It kind of revolves into itself, so it looks like the top of a fiddle or a violin, and they come out in the spring. As I say, one of the first products up, and it's just wonderful. And then the last thing on the culinary scene that I can mention is our craft beer scene. Again, if you're a beer drinker, you're in good hands in Ottawa. They've in the last handful of years, the number of local craft breweries has exploded. There's a very popular beer called Bose, B-E-A-U''S, Bose All Natural Brewing Company. They're just going to celebrate their 8th anniversary in July. And when they opened their doors, they were one of 3 breweries in the region. And now we're up to about 24 or 25. So that's all within the last 8 years, and most of that within the last 4 or 5. And it's a really good time to try all these different whether it's an IPA or a bitter or a stout. They're doing some really creative things, and yeah, it's a good time to be a beer drinker.
I'm trying to imagine how those planes can actually be quicker coming back, because of all that food, everybody's going to be so much heavier. It's going to be really difficult. And you got Lebanese food as well, so you just more and more give me more and more reasons to move over there. Yeah, do love a bit of Lebanese
Nice.
food. You can follow me on Twitter @holiday_hut. I'm still speaking to Jantine from Ottawa Tourism. We're talking about, believe it or not, Ottawa. And we've talked about the city, the main attractions. Now I'm more interested in what's in the surrounding area. So Janine's now going to tell us what you can see outside of the city.
There's golf courses. Again, our courses tend to be very affordable compared to other larger cities in Canada. So closer to Toronto or north of Toronto, the rates are much higher. There's probably about 80 or 90 courses within an hour's drive of Ottawa. So depending on which direction you're going in, you can find all sorts of great golf courses. We're fairly flat terrain-wise. So again, if you're a cyclist, some of the cycling trails outside of the city are really worth exploring. They're often on former railway lines, so they go through fields and next to rivers and over creeks, and it's very picturesque. There's lots of small towns that really have a charm about them. For instance, the Rideau Canal that I mentioned before, that 202 kilometers down to Lake Ontario, there's wonderful small towns all that dot the Rideau Canal system all along the way, that have wonderful artisans and great food and, again, very picturesque and nice, restored heritage buildings. To the east, Prescott Russell, that county, that's where Bose, the brewery I mentioned before, is located. They've also got, for the family,